Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Minton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today on Women Don't Do That, I am talking with Rachel Hartigan, journalist and author of Lost, Amelia Earhart's 3 Mysterious Deaths and 1 Extraordinary Life. This woman is extraordinary, and I am so excited to break down this conversation. I learned so much about Amelia that I didn't know. We dive into ambition, mystery, obsession, and I was surprised at the unique take that Rachel took to the story of Amelia, and she even went on an expedition. If you have ever felt pressure to be brave, perfect, or certain before taking a risk, this conversation is for you. I was shocked at how we could apply lessons from Amelia's childhood, life, and death to women's lives today. That is very applicable. So take a listen. You won't be disappointed. Well, welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you join us today. I like to start off by trying to get our guests to know you more. What does life look like for you right now?
Right now, I am in my apartment trying to figure out what to do. What does one do after you publish a book? Because this is the first book I published. I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do now? But yeah, it looks good. Lots of dog walks and looking forward to spring.
Yes, yeah, very much so. I'm really enjoying it as a Canadian who froze her butt off all winter. It's
Yes, I
very nice
imagine.
to have some sun and some warmth. What motivates you to live your best life?
I think I want to feel like I am fully myself. And when I
Mm,
don't feel like I'm being fully myself, then things feel out of whack, I
mm.
guess. So that's what really, I mean, I'd like to say to serve the world and everything, but really selfishly, the thing is, to be truly myself.
I love that answer, Rachel. I haven't had that one before, and I think
Mm.
it's been 7 years now. I think that I've been doing
Oh,
the
wow.
podcast, and so I
Oh,
really appreciate that answer. It's very insightful. I'm excited to have you talking about your book and your book launch, and it's really interesting. I got an email about the book that you were writing because I had just seen a news article about Amelia Earhart, and I had actually started, like, I had been reading it and like Wikipediaing stuff about her, and then I got
oh.
your email about your book, and I was like, I replied right away to my team. I was like, yes, yes, I want to talk to Rachel. And so I'm excited to have you here, especially because not only is this a fascinating woman, but also you're taking some very different angles on it. And
Mhm.
so excited to dive into that. And like you've had a career as a writer and a journalist, you've worked at places like National Geographic. And I wanted to maybe start off. So for people who maybe don't know as much about her, maybe don't know her at all, who is she? And
Mhm.
what do you think is missing that people don't know about her?
Yeah. Well, Amelia Earhart was one of the early female aviators, and she initially became famous in 1928 because she was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, but she flew as a passenger. But still, it amazed everyone that a woman would be brave enough even to sit in the plane to cross the Atlantic. And she went on to do lots of other break records of that kind, but she also really worked as an advocate for women, really advocating that uh, women and men too should be able to do what they feel inclined to do. So if a woman wants to be a mechanic and work on cars, she should do it. If a man wants to become a baker, he should do it, which
Mm-hmm.
was not the usual message at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember what the rest of your question was. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, just about, who was she? And so you shared she
Yeah.
did a lot of firsts on the aviation side.
Mhm.
And then also what people don't know about her
Yeah.
when they think about her in terms of what happened.
Yeah. Well, in the States, we learn about her, in elementary school as, Women's History Month. So she's one of the people that's sort of trotted out as a role model for young women. But I think there's a couple things that are interesting about her that get beyond the sort of her iconic status. And one is that she had kind of a unstable childhood with
Mm,
moving around a lot, not having a lot of money. Her father was an alcoholic,
mm,
and it took her a long time to find her path. Just like
mm.
for a lot of us,
Yeah.
she knew what she didn't want to do before she knew what she wanted to do. And then one of the reasons that she became so famous is that she married a publicist. And
Mm,
there were a lot of people have said to me, "It's like, oh, I didn't realize until I read your book." And I'm not the only author who's written about this, but that there were other female pilots. There were quite a few
mm.
female pilots, but she was the one who was in the news more because she had
Right.
that extra on the side publicist.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. When you look at writing this book, the book is called Lost. How did it come to be and why now? There's been so much research about her and her going missing and lots of
Mhm.
conspiracy theories. So, how did it come to be?
Well, it came out of, for me, out of my job at National Geographic. I was asked just out of the blue one day if I would be available to go on an expedition to this island in the middle of the Pacific, where some people think she landed. She had been on a round the world flight and she was almost done. She only had a few more stops. She was flying from Lae, New Guinea to this tiny island called Howland, and she never arrived at Howland. And so there have been lots of theories. And one theory is that she landed on another island and died a castaway.
Mm,
So I went on this expedition and I wrote stories about it for National Geographic. And then, much to my surprise, there was another expedition to the same island. So I've been to the same uninhabited island twice, which was never part of my life plan, but it was really fun. And then afterwards, one thing that came out of doing all this research is realizing so there are these theories, and there's, as you said, there's news bubbles up, people saying that they found her or they have a theory that's absolutely right.
mm,
And I was curious about the theories and the context of those theories. And it wasn't anything I could really cover in my news stories because I was focusing specifically on these expeditions.
mhm,
So when an agent reached out to me and said, I liked your stories, maybe there's a book in this, it took me a while to really think about what a book would look like. But then I
mhm,
thought it would be interesting to braid the stories of her actual life and then the lives of these theories and how they developed and what the evidence is and what sort of the cultural and historical context was for them.
mhm.
So the book covers all those things and hopefully isn't too confusing to readers.
I'm sure it's not. That sounds so interesting. When you talk about the conspiracy theorist angle and, misinformation and we
Mm,
look how, traditional media, social media, things are changing, what have
mhm.
you learned about conspiracy theories and how that is shifting and what that looks like today?
Um, in a way, I'm a little bit more sympathetic to the people
Mm,
who start believing them because I think it's not. for the most part, it's not people willfully believing something that is not true or
Mm-hmm.
something that is far fetched. I think that they come out of a wish to tie unexplainable things together,
Mm-hmm.
a way to reduce the randomness of life, a way to exert control
Mm-hmm.
over, a world that's confusing and chaotic. And I think that's how a lot of these theories came out. I wouldn't label all the theories as necessarily conspiracy theories. Some of them are just theories that people have become obsessed with, but they are
Right.
somewhat more grounded than a conspiracy theory would be. But
Yes.
I think they just come out of very human impulses to, want an end to the story,
Mm-hmm.
want there to be a reason something happened rather than
Right.
just she got lost and she crashed. There's no bad guy there. It's just something that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not very satisfying.
Right. Yes. And the kind of the lore around all of that, right? And
Yeah.
how that balloons and explore explodes. What did you learn about yourself going on an expedition? Like that seems like a very fascinating experience.
Yeah, it was. And, when people hear I work at National Geographic, they assume I do that every other week. And I, I did not. I was mostly in the office, editing and writing from my cubicle. So much less exciting than imagined. So it was definitely a test, but I was, it hit right at a time of life where I really wanted that kind of test. And I learned I could do it. Learned I could be out on a boat in the middle of the ocean and write stories and do all the things I was supposed to do. I was really worried I wouldn't be able to do what I had been assigned to do. I could do
Hmm.
it. Um, I could savor that experience, and it just really opened up my life and just made me feel very confident. I also learned that I get seasick, which was unfortunate. But
Yes.
that's just what happens. But
Right.
yeah, it was absolutely thrilling to be able to do that.
Amazing. It makes me think about how powerful it can be. It can be so scary, but how powerful it can be to step out of our comfort zone. And as you're speaking, just thinking through some of the maybe parallels to Amelia's story too, right? In terms of, stepping out of comfort zones and trying new things. And
Hmm.
not just sometimes I think as women, the challenge of expectations, it's not just others' expectations, but it's the limits or expectations or limiting beliefs we put on ourselves. And so
Hmm.
the fact that you had some of those and then went off and did that, and some of the great things like a book and different opportunities that have come from just saying yes, which I think is a great thing for listeners to hear as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's actually something when I started at National Geographic, I had been an editor in the book section of the Washington Post, which was not it was a great job, but it wasn't an adventurous job. And
Mhm.
so I was nervous about joining National Geographic. And I wrote a post-it to myself that said, just say yes to whatever comes
Yes.
along. So
Oh, I
yeah.
love that. And now you're living out that commitment to yourself.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah, yes. So listeners, get a
Yeah.
post-it and put your dream out or your challenge to yourself. It can be really helpful to make those
Yeah.
things really visual and think about them. When you think about her, she's often seen as this symbol for
Mhm.
women. But who was she as a person? Like from this experience, like what did you learn about her?
Uh, well, it's really interesting. She was very curious. She definitely didn't want a traditional life. I think she wanted to be financially secure because she hadn't been growing up.
Right?
She, I think she was very smart, but very restless. She seemed to
Mm,
have a hard time settling on things. She did a little bit of pre-med classes at Columbia because she thought she wanted to be a doctor. They ran out of money, so she had to move to LA. That's where she learned how to fly. And really, flying was the most consistent thing in her life.
Mm.
She tried teaching. She was a social worker for a while, which
Mm.
she also enjoyed. But I think she was just a restless personality. And I think she also was one of those people that really had a hunger for adrenaline and, that
Mm.
rush. Even as a kid, she built a little roller coaster for herself that of course crashed, but she wanted that speed and that height and
Mm.
that new sensation. And she was also very interested in anything that was new.
Right.
So cars, this, oh, what did they call it? It was like a prototype of a helicopter.
Mm.
She went in for a publicity stunt, she went down in some sort, not scuba gear, but pre-scuba gear.
Wow.
She was up for
Living
everything,
on
but
the
she
edge. Yeah.
also, had to retreat. I'm not sure if she was super outgoing. She just could present
Right.
herself that way.
I wonder if today she would be diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah, I wonder.
Because I have ADHD,
Yeah.
and some of what you're describing, I'm like, oh, that sounds like me to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she wanted a lot of stimulation, I think,
Hmm.
until
Hmm.
she couldn't deal with it anymore. But
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. When you look at her from the perspective of like ambition, which is
mm,
often, one of the things we think about when we look at her and the times that she was in,
hmm
right? And the
hmm
pressure for her of that as well, from whether it was a facade or not.
hmm
Talk about that a little bit, and then what us as listeners, women today, like what can we learn from that experience and that story?
Yeah, well, I think, she wanted to fly, and in order to fly, you needed a certain amount of money. And in order to
Mm,
get the money, you needed publicity in a way.
mm,
You needed to be in the public eye so that they would pay to see you at lectures, or, I mean, it was mostly the lectures. So, in order to do what she really wanted to do, she had to do all sorts of other things that
mm,
were exhausting, but also really involved putting herself forward. And
mm,
she was not I mean, as I said earlier, she definitely was not the only pilot. There were a lot of women who started flying because I think when there's a new field
mm,
and it's open, anybody can get into it. You get in at the ground door or ground level. But she, as I said, had a publicist to help her do the other part that was enabled the aviation.
right,
But I think she was also very ambitious towards, she didn't close the door behind her. She
right.
wanted to make sure that other people were following in
Mm,
her wake.
hmm.
And one thing that she did do, I think a lot of people asked her, why are you doing these risky flights?
Hmm.
And one thing she kind of insisted on saying was that I'm just doing it because I want to. And she didn't like to give a justification for it. And I think and whether that's true or not, I mean, that's what
Mm,
she said, that's what she presented. She did have a facade that she presented to the media,
mm,
a down home, well spoken young lady. But I think she also didn't feel like women needed to justify what they were doing.
right.
And I think that that's something that we can all take with
Yes.
us.
Yes. It makes me think about how, in so many cases, like especially with professional women, you get asked questions that they just wouldn't ask men, right? And we see this all the time. You'll see clips of
Hmm
actresses online,
hmm
just being asked the most ridiculous things sometimes, and
Yeah.
sometimes they kind of say something back, and it makes a viral moment. But it's very true.
hmm
It's like you don't ask, the
Right.
males the same thing, and I love. I loved what you said about, leaving the door open for the others coming behind you because I feel like it is big shoulders sometimes when you're breaking barriers and boundaries,
Hmm.
and it really is leadership to make sure that I feel like when you're first doing it, you don't even know that you're doing it. And then
Hmm.
once you kind of realize it, it's so important to do that and to make sure that
Hmm.
you're creating those pathways for other women, um, because it can be so hard to make change.
Yeah. And lonely too, if you're the only person doing it.
Yes. Yeah. And there's just it's so interesting as women, right? I own my own company, and
Hmm.
a lot of other there's not a lot of women that work
Hmm.
in my field that own companies, but there are some, and they've been so good to me. And
Mm. Hmm.
they didn't have to, and certainly
Right.
sometimes we see instances where women can be catty and unhelpful. But we really do rise when we support each other, and so
Yeah.
that's really important. One of the other things you unpack through this work that you've done is the imperfection of
Hmm.
her. And because often, we look at people like that and think they have it all together. Why is this so important to the story? Like, why do you think we need to know this?
Because she's human.
Hmm.
And I mean, if we expect perfection from her, we also expecting that from ourselves.
Hmm.
And also, it's just important. I mean, one of the reasons, I mean, there's arguments, of course, about why she never made it on her last flight, but there were some things she didn't bother to learn well
Mm,
that she really should have,
right.
like Morse code. She didn't really know how to use that. And that would have been a better way to communicate with the ships who could have guided her in. I think it's just, personally, I also think it's more interesting. I'm not very interested in reading about people who do everything right
Right.
because I don't believe it, for one thing. And also, it's more interesting to hear about people who weren't perfect and then figured out ways around it.
Yeah.
And then it's always kind of surprising to find out, well, what was the thing that kind of undid them in the end? And, it often could be something very small or that had worked out well
In the
previously.
past. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true, and you kind of got away with it. So then
Right.
you're kind of enabling yourself to keep doing
Yes.
it, like procrastination on a project or something, and then that one time
Oh,
it
yeah.
bites you.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
maybe thinking of some university projects there. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that that's very interesting to think about that imperfection piece. It's something I think about all the time in terms of leadership, because one thing that I find really challenging is, and we talked about this a little bit already, is how women are also often taking themselves out, right? Saying like, I can't do that. I
Hmm.
can never be the leader. I-
Hmm.
Or, and I know that for some women, they don't want to do some of those things, and that's also okay. But I find
Hmm.
sometimes they'll put women on a pedestal and say like, I could never do that, or I'm not like that, or they've got their life together. And I
Hmm.
think the reality is they've fallen a million times to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And often we are imperfect. We have made mistakes. We do have challenges going on in our private lives, or, sick parents, or all of these things.
Hmm.
And that's why I love this idea of authentic leadership, where people can see like we are all human and we all can do hard and great things, like if you want to, versus just taking yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. That it's so much better to see the humanity behind the person and
Mm,
understand that they're struggling
hmm.
just as we all are.
Yes, yes. Why do you think so much of her story, like the focus is just on how she died versus like some of these other pieces of her that are really important?
Well, I mean, part of it is people like a mystery,
Hmm.
um, and exploration. Yeah, I think a lot of it is because people do like a mystery and they don't like a story that hasn't ended.
Hmm.
I think too, some of it is a little bit her,
Excuse
the
me.
lessons from her life are a little bit hard in a way,
Mm,
in that we're still learning them. she lived 100 years
Mm,
ago, and it's still an issue about, what women do or are allowed to do and how
yeah.
they're allowed to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes either we don't want to hear that lesson again, or other people don't want us to hear that lesson again. So it becomes a little bit more complicated.
Hmm. Yes, I see a lot about that online. Like there's so much discourse right now about women and what they should or
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't do or can or can't, or
Mm-hmm.
people's opinions or repealing rights. And I feel like it's such an interesting perspective as a Canadian, and we
Mm-hmm.
get in our own little boxes too, right? And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, like, sometimes some of the things that I see online seem to be more happening in the States than they are here. I know some of it's
Mm-hmm.
going on here. Just some of the baseline discussion that I hear in terms of, I'm sure this is not a majority, but some people's opinions about women even being able to vote and things like
Oh, I
that.
know.
And I'm just like, what is happening that this is even a conversation? And sometimes
Yeah.
I wonder, and maybe it's just part of my hope. I'm like, I hope this is happening, not actually happening as strongly in Canada. But then I'm like, am I just trying to make myself feel better about the actual state of the
Yeah.
world?
Yeah. I mean, I think the people saying that, that's a pretty narrow slice, but
Hmm.
I think it's very indicative about how women's equality unsettles people.
Hmm.
People, there is a certain amount of security in knowing, well, if you're a man, you're going to do this. If you're a woman, you're going to do that, and just stick to your role. And you don't have to
Hmm.
think about what you want or think about anything
Yeah.
really.
Yes.
It's just much more challenging to be in a world where everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing and you don't necessarily know what to expect from people.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yes.
yeah, I found that shocking as well. And then the whole trad wife thing, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. And yeah, I'll have to look at the statistics because I've been thinking about this a lot. Because I'm like, in Canada, like the majority of women, I think it's like close to 80% are working. So that doesn't mean they all want to be like CEOs, but just some of the narrative, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how that works.
Yeah. Well,
But
the
it,
other thing is that we look back to earlier times and think, oh, it was so nice, single parent income,
mm,
and,
mhm,
staying home with the kids. And that wasn't true for a large number of people.
yeah,
Women have worked forever.
yes,
It's just, whether it's working together, like on the family farm, or taking in washing, whatever. Women have
yes,
always worked to get money
mhm.
for their families. It's
Right.
just,
And the thing that's kind of funny about the trad wife situation as well is that a lot of the people leading this are like American influencers online who
right,
are getting paid.
right,
Like they're
exactly.
not
It's like,
trad
well, what's your
wives.
job?
Yeah, yes. And I do think right now the world is scary and complicated and think people want to see it simpler and they think
Hmm.
sometimes, right, that having this simpler existence and living off the land more,
Hmm.
and I can see how that would be appealing, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, me too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so I understand that, and I find the older and older I get, I'm just recently in my 40s, and
Hmm.
I'm starting to see like the impacts of unhealthy relationships, the ending of marriages, the
Hmm.
impacts of people who have chosen to stay at home and when those relationships end,
Yeah.
the type of position that it puts women in. And
Hmm.
that's something I wouldn't have been able to recognize when I was younger, right? And so I think some of these conversations are really important to have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to think about what you're giving up, and what seems like stability might not be permanent stability,
Hmm.
if the
Hmm.
marriage ends or something happens.
Yeah, lots of nuances there. When we
Hmm.
look at Amelia and the ambition side,
Hmm.
what does it reveal about, we're talking about the trad wives, but there are lots of women who are ambitious, right? And
Hmm.
what lessons and what does it reveal for women today who are ambitious of what we can learn from her story and experience?
I think it's just, do what you want to do and just own it. Just say,
Mm,
I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm not trying to be a certain kind of person. I'm driven by something internal,
hmm.
and that's what's, getting me up in the air.
Yes. I think that's so important because it's about it goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? About that explanation piece. Because I think about myself and how often, if a man loses his job or
Hmm.
it's like the man wants to be the provider and
Hmm.
feels really strongly about that. I'm like, hold on. I'm like, I feel really, really strongly about that too, and get
Hmm.
scared and stressed and all of those things too. And when I think about my own ambition, it's not, I have a hard time squashing it. Like it's so natural to who I am.
Hmm.
It's not a facade, it's not a show, it's not
Hmm.
trying to do something. And when I try not to, I just can't. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
for some people that's hard to understand, especially if they're not like that. And it's like everybody is different.
yeah. And it's okay.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
okay.
you
And
don't
it's
have to
okay
be
to own
ambitious
it.
if you're not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's I
just,
think that's the other thing is as women because I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like less women identify that way, or at least an ambition in a way that has is seen as more male, which I think
hmm.
I probably fit into that. And it took a long time for me to accept like that's who I am and that's okay, versus
Hmm.
feeling like I shouldn't feel this way. Like why don't I not want those things or why?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
owning who you are. What is one thing you hope that people take away from this book?
Um, I think that sort of along the lines of what we were talking about, that ambition and sort of women's agency is not tied to a certain time period.
Mm,
You could have it now. Women could have it in the past to a certain extent. I mean, obviously there were more limitations, but that you should really tap in and try to figure out what you want to do and then just go for it.
right. I love that message. What do you think has this like revealed something in yourself? Are there more exhibitions coming your way?
Oh, I don't know if there are more expeditions, but yeah, I mean, just writing a book was something that I wasn't sure if I could do. And partly it's just the focus and sitting down and discipline. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I've learned, which seems so obvious, is you don't know if you can do something until you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to keep remembering that, like taking it
Yes.
to if I decide to learn pickleball or whatever,
Right.
you know,
Well, you should be very proud of
just the
yourself.
life.
It's a really big
Oh,
accomplishment.
thank you.
Yeah, it
Thank
is.
you.
Okay, we're going to jump into the rapid questions as we close things off.
Hmm.
What's one actionable step you can leave listeners with today?
Oh boy. So one thing that I've been really trying to do is to really pay attention to, if I'm trying to decide something or react to something, is what my physical response is. So I would just say pay attention to
Mm,
your body's response to things that you think might just be on your mind, but just pay attention to that.
that's great advice. What is one rule you broke that turned out to be a great decision?
If you have a job, stay at the job. I quit. I actually left National Geographic 2 years ago now,
Okay.
um, to finish the book, and partly because I was burned out, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely not the best financial decision in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
also it was, holistically, it was a good decision to make.
I second that, Rachel. Name a
Yeah.
woman that inspires you.
Oh, a woman that inspires me. So I don't, this is going to be kind of silly, but I was raised a Catholic, and you have to pick, if you get confirmed, you I have to pick a saint. And I was very unhappy with all the options because all the saints were either martyred or they had died virgins. But I came across somewhere the Saint Batildus from the medieval ages, who was kidnapped, somehow became by pirates, somehow became the Queen of France, and then founded her own nunnery. And I was like, there's someone who makes the best of a bad situation. I don't actually know all the details, but just the idea that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, things can seem like they're bad, but they could get
Yeah.
better.
I
So,
love that. I love that so much. What is a book that has impacted your wisdom or perspective?
uh, a book that I really love and think about a lot. Now I'm trying to decide between two.
You can also say two if it's hard.
Okay. Well, two of my favorite novels. One is Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. And just, I'm not religious necessarily, but just the idea of looking back and thinking about your life and what you want to impart to your young child.
Mm,
If you haven't read it, it's about an aging pastor who has a very young son, and he knows this guy has a heart condition, which makes it sound very sentimental. It's not sentimental at all.
mm,
So that's one. And then the other one is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, who I think might be Canadian. And it seems at first like a post-apocalyptic book, but part of it is about a group of Shakespearean actors who travel this world that's not had very many, people have died out, but they're putting on plays. And the idea that this culture survives and people's
mm.
connections survive. Um, so those are my two.
Oh, fascinating. Well, I don't know that we've had either of those, so great recommendations.
Oh, okay. Well, I recommend them both very highly.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. It was great to have you on today, learn more about you and your own experience through writing this book, and lots of things about Amelia that we didn't know, but also that we could apply to our own lives, which I really appreciated. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitten, or affiliated brands.